Hello, BookTube, and welcome at long last to Garbaugust. I've longed to say that. This is an event extending throughout the month of August. It was created by Ollie at Crimin'Olly, and he has assembled first a dirty dozen of horrible, disreputable hosts, and then we added a 13th. Somebody put their thumb on the scale with "it came" all over the page. Now we are 13 deplorable hosts, bringing you a month dedicated to reading trash, to reading garbage. And that is a ton of fun. I am going to be reading a ton of trash for August, and so are all of my co-hosts. You should be definitely watching for all of those videos. It's going to be so much fun. But before I batten down to the garbage that's actually on my plate for the month of August, I thought I would talk a little about trash itself. Because sometimes it's a little hard to define. We've been batting back and forth on our trashy Voxer group. What are some of the characteristics of trash? Ollie has made a list. We have a bingo card of things that if you see an element like that in trash, more than likely the thing you're in a book, more than likely that book is trash. Not always, not for sure, but more than likely, yes. Does it have a giant killer animal? Is it the 15th book in a series? Does it involve a shifter, a shapeshifter of some kind, and so on and so forth? And I love those. I love those point by point distinguishments. What is it? What are the little things we can look for? But I was also trying to think on bigger terms, on conceptual terms. And I'm not done. I have a lot more thought and a lot more conceptual videos to subject you to in the course of August. But I've come up with a group of characteristics that any one of which in and of themselves does not guarantee that a book that has this characteristic is trash. But the more of them, there are 4 of them, and the more of them you have in one book, the higher the likelihood that that book is trash. I wanted to go through those 4 with you today to sort of start a broader conversation about what is trash. Now, the best possible place for such a conversation would be a multi-screened Garbaugust video with StreamYard or Zoom. Those are notoriously hard to arrange. I am always available. I don't even have pants on. I am ready at a moment's notice almost to take part in such a discussion. But all the rest of my co-hosts have loved ones. How gross is that? They have spouses that they haven't kicked to the curb, like any sensible person would do. They have children that they haven't left exposed at the neighborhood dump. They have jobs that they go to where they put on pants and have to be responsible. They have classes that they go to, scheduling of all kinds. It's impossible to get such people to march in parade, to line up their schedules to make a discussion. I will work tirelessly to get at least one of those discussions to happen. But that would be the ideal place for such a discussion. But in the meantime, we've still got this channel where I waste your time droning on about things all the time. And I want to talk about some aspects of trash so that we can maybe pin down what it is. We shouldn't have to go with that old congressional definition of porn, which is, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. We shouldn't have to go with that. We should be able to scientifically, Jesuitically parse this out. So I've got 4 categories that I want to talk about. And the first one is transactional. Is the book you're reading openly transactional? And by that, I mean at least 2 things. One is the obvious definition of transactional, which is that the author wrote it for money. Now, you might say, some of you might echo Dr. Johnson in saying that all writers write for money. But you know what I mean. Plenty of authors don't. Plenty of you are authors. And you toil away because that dream is pulling inside you. You don't have a paycheck dangling in front of you. You don't know if it'll ever amount to money. Plenty of authors are like that. I would argue most are. I know quite a few who are. And they don't do it. They're not doing it for money. They'd love it if somewhere down the line it paid off. But that's not why they're writing. But then there are writers who do. And the reason that I know they exist is because I'm one of them. There are writers who will take a brief from someone who has money to spend. And the reason they take the brief is for the money. They don't care intrinsically about the brief itself. They don't care about the brief itself. They mainly care about the dangled bit of money. So if, for instance, there was a Bangladeshi arts festival, big thing, lots of big name draws coming into tents, lots of bookish events and readings and whatnot, and let's say there was a brochure, and the government was sponsoring that brochure, and the brochure was going to be 16 or 17 pages, and there was going to be a lot of text on those pages. And let's just say that the people in charge of putting the brochure together don't have any writing ability and wouldn't be able to generate that text. Well, then the Bangladeshi Arts Council might say to some writer, let's say, hypothetically, we're going to feed you, we'd like to feed you the raw material, the dates, the places, the people, the attendees, the prices, that sort of thing. And we'd like you to make it interesting. We'd like you to put it through a meat grinder, and we'd like the prose that comes out on the other end to be prose that we can slap into this brochure and make it interesting. And for that, we will pay you $8,000. All hypothetical, let's say. Well, if you are, a writer for hire, an Old Bailey hack, you aren't probably going to care much about the Bangladeshi Arts Festival, but you will take that job for the money. And you will generate that prose. Now, if you're a good hack, if you're a seasoned professional, the prose that comes out the other end will be interesting. You will definitely earn your money. But you would never have done it otherwise. You have never been burning on the inside to write about the Bangladeshi Arts Fest. Whereas if you have, a long simmering generational memoir about sodbusters in Colorado, you're going to be writing that in your spare time. You're going to be working on that, even though there's likely no one who will ever see it and likely no one who would ever pay for it. So that's what I mean. That's one part of what I mean by transactional, is that it will be done transactionally. The author will be writing it that way. That is one possible explanation for the transactional that may be an indicator that you're reading trash. But the other part of transactional is a little bit more forward-facing. In order to know the first part, you would have to know the author. Largely, maybe not. Maybe you would. No one actually wants to write the novelization of Tron 2. So you could probably guess, and you'd probably be right about that. But in a lot of cases, no, you would have to know the author. The second part deals with the reader. And that can also be just explicitly transactional. Is the book that you're reading simply meaning to get a job done on you, with your cooperation? And are you going to that book specifically because of that job and nothing else? Nothing else at all. And that leads us to the second characteristic, which is undemanding. Is the thing we're talking about undemanding? Now, some transactional things that are done for money are demanding. They will not be easy. They will make demands on you. They won't be easy for you to read. But a lot of them will be. A lot of them will be undemanding. Is the thing undemanding? Again, let's leave the writers out, because we don't really know them, and let's be honest, we don't really want to know them either. But the reader, you will know in a minute. As a reader, you will know in a minute if something that you've picked up is undemanding. I'm not saying that you'll put it down again. Not at all. You might want something undemanding, very much so. But you'll know right away if it is, right? And it won't matter what kind of a reader you are. You could be multilingual, you could be reading artsy-fartsy stuff all the time, except once in a while. You'll know. If it's a palate cleanser, if it's just simple undemanding fare, you'll know, and maybe you'll want that. But if it's undemanding on you, it was probably undemanding for the writer. And if it was undemanding for the writer to write, that is a very strong indication that what you're reading is, in fact, garbage. So you want to pay attention to whether or not it's undemanding. And then also connected, these sort of flow in line with each other. The next one is repetitive. Is the work that we're considering repetitive? Now, again, I have two aspects of that I want to talk about. The first one is just the explicit repetition of things. Does the strapping barbarian hero possess thews? Not thighs or leg muscles, but thews, T-H-E-W-S. Does that main barbarian character possess bristling thews? And if he does, are you told that on every third page? Are we constantly hearing about his thews? If the princess that he is chasing after is incomparable, let's say, or has flaming red hair, Are we always hearing that? Is that over and over again in the book? Does the book itself indulge in explicit repetition? Hero gets into a dark alley, fights his way out. Hero has some conversations, a meal or two, some ale, then gets into another dark alley and fights himself out again. Is it explicitly repeating itself? Is it repetitive in that way? But also repetitive in the larger sense of how many books in the series are there? Ollie's our list of trash mentioned. Are there lots of books in the series? If there are, your chances go up that it's garbage the longer into the series you go. If you're reading book 20 of a series, it's almost certainly garbage. There are exceptions to all of these. And it'd be fun to put some of those together. But generally speaking, as a rule, if it's that repetitive, then the author's on autopilot. They're not thinking anymore. We're going back to the first part, they are just being transactional. They have a brief for a new, Oxman of Planet Nine. Oxman of Planet Nine has taken off. They have a brief for a new Oxman novel. If it's book number 21, no offense to Doc Savage, but it's not going to be any good. You know that the author is not thinking, well, I was barely scratching. I wasn't really getting the ear of my muse for the first 20 books. But 21, I'm digging deep into the well springs now. No, it's going to be about mechanical spiders, and it's only because you want the money. And that is that's another aspect of the repetitive part. First part is what happens in the book. Is the book itself repetitive? But also, does the book repeat itself as a book many times under the author's hand? If that happens, almost certainly, it's not for sure, but almost certainly it's trash. And then the last part flows from all of the rest of them, and that is it derivative? Now, again, you can have two different aspects to that. Is it derivative of itself? Are you reading a Buck Rogers adventure that reads by number 30 exactly like the ones in the 20s, where it's literally retread, where it's just the toff over and over and over again? Is it derivative in that way? But also, in a broader sense, is it derivative of something else, something the author didn't do? Ollie has mentioned for a long time now, when Garbaugust was just a trashy twinkle in his eye, he has often mentioned that garbage books will often be derivative of a larger social issue that is preoccupying the news cycle, and somebody crams out a book based on that, whether it's the horrors of D&D or the satanic panic or free love or the rise of the mafia or anything, whatever's commanding the headlines. Is it possible that the book you're reading is derivative of that? So the author never really had the urge to write a book about that subject. They're taking it, they're deriving it from something else. That's one way. Also, a little bit more explicitly derivative would be, is the author taking an entire imaginative work that they had no say in at all? Is it that somehow or other in the conveyor belt of, I don't even know, Orville novels or Babylon 5 novels, that in the conveyor belt that is that production, somehow or other something went wrong. It was a cancellation or a miscommunication, and suddenly some producer realizes, I need a book for that spot, and I don't have one. I need a book for that spot in 4 months, and I don't have one. I've got one for the month before and the month after, but I don't have one for that. So they call their people right away. Their people have a relatively short list of names of authors. They go to one of those authors, usually very proven items, and they say, we need a manuscript. I'm sorry, but we do. We need a 75,000 word manuscript, and we need it in almost no time at all. We need it in a month, something like that, maybe even less than that. And if you're on that list, I have been trying forever to get on that list, but if you're on that list, the very last thing you are going to say is, I've never heard of the show until you mentioned it to me right now. I've never seen a single minute of it. I don't know anything about it. There's no way I can do it. The research alone would take that much time. They will not say that. Instead, they will say, you got it. And they will cram together as much research as possible on this derivative material, this stuff that not only did they not create it, but no one person did. Bunches of people have added to it. They will cram and they will generate. They will plop something out. They will make their deadline. They will get their money. It's never all that much, but it's a steady thing. Because the names on that list only get off that list by dying. So it's a steady thing. If it's something like that, then I'm not being a snooty critic or a snob in any way to call the resulting book extremely derivative. It is the dictionary definition of derivative. It derives entirely. It's derivative entirely of something else. It will have maybe a good turn of phrase here and there. If the person on that list is really good, Alan Dean Foster, Peter David, if the person on that list is really good, it might have a good turn of phrase. The writer will have been told at least once, maybe more than once, usually by a dark-suited figure wearing sunglasses indoors who appeared in their kitchen and seems not to be mortal. They'll be carrying a briefcase, this figure with the reflective sunglasses, and they will say, don't kill anybody, don't invent anybody. And then you'll say, well, okay, I guess I won't do that. Can I get you some water? And you'll turn around and they'll be gone. that is a studio lawyer. That's what they're like. That's a studio lawyer. As the Simpsons say, if you kill one of us, two will take our place. Generally speaking, the writer will have heard that. You cannot break new ground at all. You cannot solve a mystery. You cannot add an explanation. You can't do anything like that. Because your book's going to want to be canon in a canonical world that you didn't create. So the most you can do is flesh out dialogue. Here's a plot. Run it by us. Follow the book, the show's Bible, and you'll be fine. That's what I mean by derivative. Mainly that's what I mean by derivative. And chances are very good, for the limitations that I just described, chances are very good that if something is that derivative, it will not be good. It will be trash. Very good. I think that with all of these things, transactional, undemanding, repetitive, and derivative, remember it any way you like, even an acronym. I think with any one of those, it's still possible to write something that isn't trash. And I think if all of my co-hosts and I scratched our heads long enough, we could come up with books that are actually good, that fit one or two of these categories. My only contention is the more of these four categories you add on, the more likely it is. And I think if you have a book that's all four, there's no chance that it's any good. None whatsoever. Which doesn't stop you from reading it. It might the rest of the year, but not in August. In August, you want as many of those characteristics as possible because we are wallowing in garbage. Whereas the whole while, over on planet Jordan Parsons, he's watching through his interplanetary telescope and he's saying, why are they doing that? Why would they do that? Why would anyone do that? Why? What's going on here? We'll probably confuse poor Jordan to death by the end of the month. Or we'll convert him. One way or another, that is my first Garbaugust video. I want to do a whole bunch of specific books on garbage books, videos on garbage books, but I also want to do some conceptual stuff. I wanted to do that all through the summer's other breakout BookTube event, June on the Range, and I never did it. I did it in videos, ad hoc, a little bit at a time, but I never made whole videos on it, and I wanted to, but not Garbaugust. I have been reading garbage for a long, long time. It's about time I started laying down some Jesuitical categorical rules about it, and this is one of them. Transactional, undemanding, repetitive, and derivative. Is the book any of those? Chances are, if it is, it's trash. But let's talk more about trash as August goes on. I'll wrap this video up for now. I think tomorrow I'll probably talk about a trashy book. But in the meantime, like with all the other events that I'm part of for August, I urge you to go and find my co-hosts. I will list them all down below. Every time I try to do that, the links don't work, so bear with me. It's a Grandpa Simpson type thing. I'll try to make the links work. But subscribe to the channels so that you don't miss their videos. I think you can also do a hashtag. Not sure if I'm supposed to do a hashtag now. I'll have to ask. I'm not going to do it and risk it. But I'll follow these things because this is going to be a ton of fun. A ton of fun. So whether it's a specific trashy book tomorrow or another conceptual video, I think I'll certainly be back tomorrow. And I will keep working on arranging one of those discussion videos. I would like that to happen. Anyway, I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.